inside corner, lines up the next inside corner going the other way downstream, and it straight lines it place to place. That's a rule of thumb on how gold travels downstream. But again, because it is 19 times heavier than water, we actually need a big flood in progress to even pick this stuff up and get it moving. So we've got a large flood in our waterway. We've got a corner in the river. All of that fast water is rushing around the outside of the corner. The inside of the bend is a low pressure zone, an eddy, a backwash. If the water velocity slows down enough, some of that heavy material can drop out of the flow. So if you guys are panning for gold in a gold rich stream, tail end of inside bend is a really good place to start looking. That's where I'm going with that. Modern era gold rushes. The first biggie, 1849, California, America. The next big one to kick off, 1852, Victoria, Australia. If we fast forward to 1860, New Zealand, anyone in this country that's been reading newspapers over the previous decade has read stories about what gold's done for personal wealth and for the wealth of the area where it's been found, the country or the region it's been discovered in. Auckland was the first province. Well, at this stage, 1860-61, we do already know there is gold in New Zealand. Even the Surveyor General going through this region, mapping mountains, lakes and rivers, has reported to central government picking up gold. Lots of people have picked it up, but nobody's ever followed up on it. You know it's here. Auckland was the first province in the country to try and have a goldfield discovered in their region to help the town grow. They put a £500 reward up to see if somebody could find a payable field. The money was paid out. I believe the field discovered was in the Thames region. Some of you guys may be familiar with that region. I'm not. I'm from down here. Yeah, Thames, somewhere in around Thames, but apparently it only, close. It only lasted for about 3 months. Very quickly they panned all of the gold out of the alluvial clays, gravels and silts. Those early prospectors, they could see gold in the hard rock, but they only had picks and shovels, so it was uneconomic for them to try and extract it. So they abandoned that field. Nelson was the next province in New Zealand to try the same thing. Again, a £500 reward. Closely followed by Canterbury, closely followed by us here in Otago. And this is where it kicks off. We have an experienced prospector from Tasmania named Gabriel Read. This guy's mined successfully on the Californian and Victorian goldfields before he arrives in New Zealand. He hits Dunedin and he sets off inland following the existing stock route. There were very, very few people in the interior of the South Island during this period. But for the previous decade or so, we'd started pushing sheep large high country runs for wool production throughout Otago and Canterbury. Gabriel's reasoning for following the stock meant that he could talk to the run holders and the workers on these big farms and try and work out what was going on in the districts that he's walking through. So he, at a stock crossing through a small stream just out of where the town of Lawrence is today, on the road from here to Dunedin, Gabriel digs down about 2.5 feet. Come on in, dude, grab a seat somewhere, anywhere you like. And he's quoted in all the literature as saying that the gold was shining like the stars of Orion on a moonlit frosty night. He's got a pan, a knife and a shovel. G'day guys, come on in and grab a seat. So over the next 7 hours, Gabriel pulls out 10 ounces of gold. He's using the knife just to flick the gold out of the cracks and crevices in the stream bed. He let the provincial council in Dunedin know what he found, where he found it, how he recovered it. Once everything was verified, he got the £500 reward. Now Gabriel's back in the same stream continuing to prospect, but this time he's got half of Dunedin looking over his left shoulder watching what he's doing because they want to have a crack at this as well. Dunedin, only founded as a town in 1848, 1861 when this took place, total population is in the region of 1,200 people. It's not a big place. But if you guys are running a local bakery and you guys have got the local veggie shop or whatever, if over 2 or 3 days 600 people just disappeared into the hills, into the scrub, you're going to get a little bit concerned about your business going forward and your income. No need to panic. It's a quick trip by sailing ship from Otago Harbour to either Sydney or Melbourne ports in Australia. As I said, we had the gold rush kick off in 1852 Victoria. Thousands of prospectors with a swag, a pan and a shovel, just waiting to hear that Freed or Tom's found gold over in the next valley. Within a very quick, short space of time, every single ship arriving back in Otago Harbour is chock full of prospectors. No passport, no vaccine pass. Off the boat, a couple of shillings to buy a prospecting licence, and then they head into this new gold field. The council will set a guy up to administer the field, so these guys will walk in, put their 4 pegs in the ground and register their claim, and then they can start digging for gold. They're telling us that inside 1 month, 6,000 plus prospectors in what's now known as Gabriel's Gully, prospecting for gold. The next 2 guys that took it to a whole new level arrived here from the Californian goldfields. An American named Horatio Hartley, and his offsider, an American-born Irishman named Riley. So these 2 experienced prospectors are looking into Gabriel's Gully, and they see all these men digging holes looking for gold. They know what they're about. They set off upstream, up into the hills and mountains. They're looking for the source of all of this gold. Any questions as I go through this, just hook in and ask. Okay? So is everybody in here familiar with the township of Cromwell, just round the corner? About 5 minutes round the road. There's a bridge over the lake today. If you hang a right towards Clyde and Alexandra over that bridge, about 4 kilometres south of that bridge, there's a Goldfields monument sign on the side of the road. Below that sign in the river, on one of those inside beams, now of course it's under Lake Dunstan for hydroelectricity, those 2 guys found that inside beam loaded in gold. Now they're telling us that over a period of approximately 6 weeks, they pulled out just over 87 pounds weight in gold. So slightly over 1,000 ounces of gold. They sewed up the legs on a pair of trousers to use as a pack, filled the legs up with gold over the shoulder and off on foot over the hills, through the rivers back to Dunedin. They arrived in town early on a Friday evening. It's still a small town. You can imagine that news would have travelled pretty quickly and a bit of excitement generated in the town. First thing on Saturday morning, a very astute man named Vincent Pike. He's been set up by the council to administer anything to do with gold going forward for the Otago region. He's rounded these 2 characters up, dragged them into his office, and he's drilling them pretty hard. Where did you find all this gold and how did you recover it? The meeting did not get off to a good start, but eventually they came to an arrangement where the council gave those 2 prospectors a £2,000 reward for finding what they considered was a whole brand new gold field. And they still have over 1,000 ounces of gold at over £3 an ounce to sell as well. So overnight, these 2 characters are worth somewhere in the region of just shy of £6,000. Dunedin in 1861, you can build yourself a brand new home for about £75. 6,000 is a lot of money. News travelled pretty quickly around the planet, even without the internet. So they're telling us that within 2 years, we are 40,000 plus people crawling all over the hills in Central Otago, either looking for gold or supporting the gold mining industry in one form or another. So this is rapid growth. These prospectors continue to work their way up the Clutha River, or the Molyneux as it was known. Then they found their way across and they started heading up this arm of the river that you guys have just crossed out here to Kawarau. We've got a early newspaper report putting a prospector in the river not terribly far upstream from today's bridge. The report says that this guy saw a faint yellow line heading out into the river in the bedrock. Goes on to say that he's up to his neck in the river, reaching down as deep as he can. He's supposed to have recovered over 27 pounds weight of gold out of that single crevice. So they're continuing to work their way up this waterway, finding gold wherever they can. The next major tributary that we get to going upstream from here is the Nevis River, which was initially bypassed by these early miners, but they're still taking good gold out of here today. The next river that these early guys hit hard was the Arrowtown. Everybody familiar with Arrowtown? You guys been to Arrowtown? Not yet? Yeah. Main street, if you go out behind the shops, there's a car park out in the riverbed, today's riverbed. Just upstream, round the corner from today's car park, 3 small groups of prospectors are on seriously good gold. Super rich river, the Arrow. They're staying hidden up in the Arrow River Gorge recovering gold. Now the reasoning for being secretive, because it is such a rich river, as soon as they get discovered by the general prospecting population, it's going to be gazetted as a new goldfield. They're going to have to put 4 pegs in the ground, and they're going to be limited to about 33 feet of stream frontage. Pre-being a registered goldfield, those guys had free rein up the Arrow, the Richburn, any exposed reef or those inside beams, they cleaned up. We still don't know today how much gold they pulled out, but they weren't worried about getting a 2,000 pounds reward from the Provincial Council. They're doing okay. The next tributary that we get to going upstream is the Shotover. Now, we've got to try and get some perspective on this. We've got experienced prospectors from the American and the Australian goldfields. These guys are from all over the planet. They hit the Shotover River and they named it the richest river in the world for gold. Seriously bold claim. Early newspaper reports, historic documents, early history books giving us a little bit of an insight into what was going on the rush into the Shotover. Prospectors wading out into the river with a shovel, getting a shovel full of wash and just panning it off on the blade of the shovel, 2 to 3 ounces of gold. The record for a single dish, 1 pan full of material out of the Shotover, was 16 pounds, 8 ounces of gold. That's just shy of $800,000 in New Zealand currency today for half an hour's work with a shovel and a pan. It's pretty ridiculous. 2 young Maori boys swimming across the Shotover. Their dog gets caught in the current, swept into the gorge, stranded on a ledge on the far side of the river. These 2 young men made their way down to the animal to recover it. In an afternoon, they picked up over 300 ounces of nuggets off that single ledge. And the dog wasn't even a gold retriever. But if you guys are driving up into the Skipper's Canyon today, you can still make out the old signpost that's pointing down to Maori Point where that took place. It's pretty crazy, absolutely astonishing. Early 1980s, we've got a local mining company working their way up Shotover, Allen Mining. They've got a floating barge with an excavator on the front, trommel on the back to process their gravels. If we look at their company records with it, on their returns while they were going up through sections of the Shotover, we can see that they were doing up to 1,000 ounces a day. 3 or 4 blokes with 1 digger, 1,000 ounces a day. Today, 1 ounce of gold in New Zealand is worth over $3,400. That's a lot of money. It didn't take these early prospectors very long to pick up the easy gold off the beaches, the exposed reef, and then they started heading up into the mountains looking for those quartz veins, the source of all of this gold. Now, there's a little picture behind me, Shotover River. We're getting up towards the head of the Shotover River in this picture. They named this mountain at the head of the Shotover Mount Aurum. Aurum is a Latin word for gold, AU is a symbol for gold. Those early prospectors believed that that mountain is a mountain of gold and the source of all the material in the Shotover River system. Now there's another peak very similar to this at the head of the Arrow called Advance Peak, and later geological work has pretty much confirmed that most of the gold throughout Otago and Southland has been ground off the sides of those 2 mountains by glacial action historically. Pretty crazy. So guys are up in the mountains looking for the gold-rich quartz veins. Simultaneously, other prospectors are hitting these golden tussocky terraces that you can see in this photo. Now what I'm talking about with those, you're driving down these roads through these gorges. If you look across the other side, you can quite often make out the flat terraces as you come down to where the riverway is today. They are ancient riverbeds, or they've been left behind by early glacial action. So anywhere ice or water is transported gravels down through these valleys, it's also transported gold. So people in the mountains looking for the veins, people on these terraces looking for those narrow pay streaks and the old rivers. Simultaneously, other prospectors are trying to work out how to get the gold out of the middle of the river. So we've got dredging technology takes off. 24 of those big bucket line dredges. There's a few photos around the walls, some good ones up here. 24 of those machines operating within a very close proximity of where we're sitting right here. Well over 200 of them in Otago and Southland banging away extracting gold. Dunedin by the mid-1890s was exporting those massive machines to Siberia in Russia and to Alaska for gold recovery. So Dunedin, from being founded in 1848, 50 years later they were a manufacturing powerhouse. Massive foundries and engineering shops, building and exporting large equipment right around the planet. All of that growth is on the back of gold. It's just crazy stuff. Gold is what put New Zealand on the world stage. Not hitting seals on the head with sticks or pulling off sheep in the high country. Gold was news. Now, I'm going to show you some bits of gold, but any questions, just hook in and ask.
I have one. Like all these prospectors that they came from all over the place.
Yes.
Like, what was their life like? It's like, where did they get food from, or like, because they were talking to the wild with no, like, barely anything on their shoulders. Right?
You've raised such a barrel of questions. There was very little to eat in here. Now, I did mention that for about the previous decade, we'd started pushing sheep into the large high country runs. So we had mutton or lamb on the high country runs, and these local farmers pretty much fed the early prospectors and kept them alive. Getting goods in here by horse and cart, there were no roads. They had to form their own roads to get the materials in here. There were no trees in Central Otago when the gold rush took off. Nothing. No scrub. There was practically nothing here. Yes?
How does it get enough water to drink?
Water's fine. There's water, all of the rivers have got water in them, but we are a dry climate. It's not difficult to find clean water to drink anywhere around here. Didn't need filters back then.
Yeah.
Is it still commercially viable?
Oh yes, they're telling us, one report I've read tells us that 80% of the gold in New Zealand is still on the ground untouched. Today, the large commercial mines that are using chemicals and that to recover gold, if they're anything over 0.2, 0.4 of a gram per tonne of material, it can be an economic mine. The largest producing gold mine in America today is recovering gold that's invisible to the naked eye. They didn't even know there was gold in the area until they assayed it looking for something else. So you don't need a nugget. If you're making yourself a cup of coffee at home, if you ditch the coffee off your teaspoon and replace it with the same amount in gold, you are basically looking at 1 ounce, or $3,400 plus in New Zealand currency. Pretty close proximity. But again, an ounce of gold is heavier than an ounce of butter. Miles and kilometres are both length measurements, but they're different systems. Commodities, flour, tea, butter, sugar, coffee are measured in a French-based measurement system. Gold is measured in troy ounces. So, relativity-wise, an ounce of flour weighs 28 grams in the metric system. 1 ounce of gold weighs 31.1 grams in the metric system. So you need to be aware of that if you're buying and selling gold, or buying and selling gold too. If you've got an ounce or not. Even Wikipedia gets that wrong. So yeah.
How's gold like naturally formed in these mountains? How is gold generally formed in the first place? That these mountains seem to have more of it than anywhere else.
I can't answer why it's in some places and not in others, but they're telling us that it comes from the ocean.
Comes from the ocean.
100 metric tonnes of seawater, 1 gram of gold in solution. And then over millennia, seeping down through the ground, then the volcanic activity in the centre of the earth refines all that stuff, and under massive pressures and heat, forces it back up into the mountains. And that's what we're looking at here. You've got your molten quartz rock in here. That was the liquid rock that brought all these minerals up from the centre of the planet. The orange staining in this is sulfide or sulphur. But if you have a look around the outside, or just pass that round, there's actually bits of gold showing on both sides of that bit of rock. Everybody can have a look at it.
But how would you get pieces of wood?
Okay, out of the rock. We've got a stamper up here. As soon as we're finished here, we're going to wander up and I'll explain how that works to crush the rock and extract the gold. So we'll get to that one. So here again, there's a little bit of quartz rock straight out of the side of the mountain. But as this piece is going around, it's a whole lot easier to see all the gold in this piece.
So when you say gold nugget, it's like gold embedded in a regular stone. It's not like pure.
Well, New Zealand gold is nearly pure gold. I'll explain that in a minute as well. I'll show you this bit and then I'll come back to that. So again, we've got a bit of quartz rock out of the side of the mountain. Where this one differs from the previous two. This one's got smooth sides, rounded corners. So this has been tumbling down the river, getting polished. If you guys start finding material like this in the waterway, you need to be aware that not very far upstream, there is probably still a seam feeding off the mountain into the waterway today. This stuff doesn't normally travel terribly far downstream before it is free gold. We have 100 and 150 year flood events about every 6 months. All those big boulders rolling down that stream are going to hit that quartz and shatter it and turn that into free gold. Now I want to pass this one around with this piece and then we're going to get to your question. This is a 2 3/4 ounce nugget worth about $9,000. Picked up in Australia with a metal detector. As these two are going around, keep them together and check out the difference in colour. Australia is a highly mineralised country. This nugget has got quite a high percentage of silver in it. New Zealand is not a mineralised country, so our gold is actually recognised worldwide as very clean. So if you guys are buying gold for investment purposes, after it's been refined, it's stamped on top of the ingots. 99.999% pure gold. The stuff we're picking up out of the creek out here is between 92 and 98% pure gold straight out of the creek. It is very clean.
So is it possible that we happen to go to the creek and pick up a gold that might have gold?
2 months ago, myself and another young boy, we drove from Cromwell to Wanaka on the other side of the lake. We went into every single fisherman's access, public roads down to the river so people can go fishing. We went panning at every single public fisherman's access. We got gold in every single pan.
How much gold?
The best pan, we had 50 pieces in it. Very, very tiny, but there was 50 pieces in one pan. And it's just public. Just anybody can go down and go.
Why don't you?
Yeah. Kiwis do not have an affinity with gold.
Oh.
It's, if you have a look at the big mining companies that are operating in New Zealand today, they're all Australian. New Zealanders really don't care about this stuff.
Are they taxed appropriately?
If you start recovering large amounts of gold, it used to be about $8,000 a week, then you have to start paying royalties to the Crown.
Royalties to the Crown.
Yeah.
Forget it's British.
Well, it goes to the government, and it should do too, because it's a resource that belongs to everybody that lives in this country. It's our resource.
Exactly, that's what it asks. It's taxed
Yeah.
appropriately,
Yeah. So this little bottle that's going to go around now, it's got some nice little chunks in it, and these pieces were recovered from our panning trough down here by people who were panning very badly through this bay. It's, say no more, you don't want to be throwing that away. Yes,
Is that bottle pure gold?
it is.
The bottle contains pieces of
The bottle contains the gold, yeah. So this next little bottle, you're going to have to hold this one sideways. There's a whole lot of tiny little flakes in this bottle. This is usually what we find here. There are nuggets, but usually find stuff if you're going to find gold at all. Don't throw it away. It is valuable. As I said, 1 teaspoon is worth over $3,400. It does not need to be a nugget. Tiny pieces add up very quickly because it is so damn heavy. So about 10% of the gold recovered in the world today is used in electronics. Cell phones, cameras, computers. Now its value in electronics. Gold is a really good electrical conductor, but its true value, gold does not oxidise or corrode. So over time, those fiddly terminals so close together aren't going to oxidise, short across and destroy your circuit. They're telling us that 30 to 40% of the gold recovered on the planet today, I believe this has gone up over, it's well over 50 today. 50% of the gold recovered on the planet today is being hoarded by the uber rich. Just in case Donald gets back in or Putin goes nuts, it's a hedge against their other investments around the planet going belly up. And the remainder is either used in jewellery or being accumulated by cultures other than New Zealand. We really don't get it with gold. I know, it does my head in. So we get asset tested when we retire. If you've got half a dozen properties and a couple of $1 million in the stock market, that's all asset tested. If you've got gold in the top drawer at home, you've still got the same value and it is not asset tested.
Acid tested.
Asset, yeah. So Kiwis need to get on board. So there's a couple of little stones in here. These are ironstone, magnetite and hematite. This is the next heaviest rock in the riverbed behind gold. Now I said the specific gravity of gold is 19.3. Specific gravity of this stuff is about 6. So gold is 3 times heavier than anything else in the stream bed. This stuff, that's a magnet. That's ironstone. You probably weld those 2 rocks together. It's pretty crazy stuff. But if you start finding the black sand at the bottom of your pan, that's the heavy materials dropped into that crack or crevice in the stream bed. If there's gold there, it should be mixed in with it. Usually not very far apart. So any questions before we go for a little bit of a walk up the hill? It's a pretty cool hobby. If you guys are playing golf for a hobby, 19th hole, it's money out of your wallet every time. If you're gold mining, it's potential to actually go home with some money in your pocket.
In New Zealand, though, not everywhere else.
I don't know. They tell you, as I say, they've estimated that 80% of the gold here is still in the ground. But where it's been concentrated in the rivers historically, today it is a volume game. You need to put lots of material through to recover that gold. But it is still there. So lots of cool stories. We get a lot of people in here that are on family farms that great-granddad bought with gold from back in the gold rush. We had a young girl in here a couple of months ago, and all of the girls in the family going forward, whenever they get married, they get enough gold out of granddad's stash to get a wedding band made. We've had a couple of farmers in here from Northland who both said that they had gold on their properties in Northland, and I didn't even know there was gold in Northland. Top Northland, right up the top. They both said that they had gold on their properties.
On their properties.
Yeah.
So they're going to dig out like what, an ounce every week and go sell it in the nearby gold store?
Okay. Is anybody from here from around Waikaia, Riversdale? It's about 80 kilometres south of here. So 2013, 6 farmers all together, they decided that they were going to mine their properties because they were mined with these big bucket line dredges in the 1870s right through to the early 1900s. They thought they have a look, they see how much gold these old timers left behind. They set up a mine. So in early 2017, so after 4 years of operation, they just knocked up 2 tonnes of gold.
2 tons.
And where would you go sell it? Like, let's say, suppose you found this nugget, and you take it to the what?
If you've got small amounts of gold, people that are finding small amounts of gold do recreations, they can sell it on Facebook or you can sell it at a tourist shop in Arrowtown or Queenstown. If you're finding bulk gold, there is a commercial buyer in Christchurch, and there's also one in Auckland who'll buy your bulk gold. It's got to be going through the books if you're doing little amounts that you sell for cash.
We're going to find a ton of gold.
But there's so much, it's a crazy setup. We need more people in New Zealand going out prospecting for gold, just to keep it as a recognised hobby.
The name of the store is called
It can be called, it can be bloody gold. You get in the rivers and a glacier feed, even a 7 mil wetsuit is still cold. So I do have to take all these bits back inside before we continue. I'll just put these inside and I'll meet you guys out the front and go for a walk back up and have a look. Very quickly the large water wheels were ditched in favour of Pelton wheels like these examples. So they have the same water supply, they've got their dam up the hill, their pipe coming down. Where they opened the valve and the water went into the top of the water wheel to turn it, now when they open the valve they've got a small jet with a small orifice with a jet of water, so it's a more efficient use of that same supply, and the jet shooting into these cups starts the shaft spinning, and then with belts, gears, pulleys, you're away, you can drive your equipment. Other reason I like to stop here, if you turn and look at the terrace directly behind you, in this spot you can clearly make out the gravel, clay, gravel layers. So the gold is in the gravel layers. That's either left behind by glacial action or it's ancient riverbed. You go and pull any of those stones out of those seams, they'll all be slightly rounded or water walled. We'll pop up and have a look at these fish eggs.
Sure. Everybody's like that. Is that gold? Did you pick up your stone? Shiny things.
Yeah.
All that shiny is gold.
The floor is shiny. So it means the floor is gold.
What's one like that?
What about the hammers that are crushing that gold rich rock? Oh, you can find that. Oh, yeah, that works. Yeah. Try and get a bit of shade if you can. First thing, big first. I'll wait a couple of these first. But this stamper doesn't belong on this site. I mentioned before that if you're panning for gold, the tail end of an inside beam is a good place to start looking. These terraces that we're on here, we're actually at the tail end of an inside beam. That's why they mine here. If you go upstream about 4 or 5 k's, there's a power station at the Roaring Lead. The river does a hard right-hand turn. This is the tail end of that inside turn. Where that ridge comes down on the other side of the river, the river does a hard left-hand turn round towards Cromwell, and all of the old timers' workings have shifted across to the other side of the river by following that narrow paved street down that riverbed. It does work. So this machine was made in Castlemaine in Australia. 1882 it was in New Zealand. G'day guys. if you have found, if you have found 1865, some prospectors found some rock at Bendigo, top end of Lake Dunstan, that had some gold in it. They sent it away to get crushed and assayed to see how rich it was, see if it was rich enough to work. So this is in 1865. These guys borrowed £6,000, a lot of money. Bought one of these things from Australia, shipped it to New Zealand and dragged it all the way up here by bullock cart and dug all their water races, put their dam in to drive their machinery. We're probably looking at between 1 and 2 years to get everything on site, set up, ready to start crushing rock. When they did crank up, they were debt free in 10 weeks.
10 weeks.
10 weeks. So you're removing your gold-rich ore from the mountain. You're getting it to the hopper on the back of this with little ore carts on rails, horse and cart, wheelbarrows, any means at your disposal. There's a feed plate feeding that material into the mortar box. Those hammers are rocking up and down. Under each hammer there's a steel anvil. All of that rock is getting crushed till it's fine enough to come through those small holes on the front plate. Then all of that slurry is running across a copper plate tinned in mercury. Super clean sheet of copper, put mercury on it, scrub it with a rag, it's like you've soldered it, it sticks to the copper. Gold and mercury have got a natural affinity for each other, and we know the gold is super heavy, it's at the bottom of this slurry, it's in contact with the mercury, it gets absorbed. It's called amalgam when it starts to accumulate gold. So any of the larger chips that have come through these holes and they've made it right across the copper plate and potentially still have gold in them, used to get caught in a very fine sieve at the bottom, and then those tiny chips were put into this round bowl behind me. That's called a berdan. It's exactly the same as a mortar and pestle in your kitchen at home. Those little chips get ground up to a powder. I can either put a little bit of mercury in there to absorb the gold, or bring the ground up material out and run it across my mercury table. Any gold is absorbed into the amalgam. When you've finished your run, you wipe all the amalgam off the copper plate, and we need a bit of chamois leather, a bit of goat leather. Drop it into a piece of chamois leather and you wring it really, really tightly. Excess mercury gets squeezed out through the pores in the leather. The gold won't fit. So you've recovered some of your mercury. The remaining material gets put into a retort like this example here, locked down tight, and then we heat it. The last of the mercury vaporizes off the top. As it gets further away from the heat source, it starts to cool. It condenses back into its original form and slowly dribbles down that pipe into a bucket of cold water. So between wringing your amalgam and the chamois leather and the retort, you've got all of your mercury back to life on the table for the next run, and whatever's remaining in the retort can be heated up and poured into the next off. It's a long-winded process, but it works. Unfortunately, I can't start this up today, it's a bit broken. But we're going to pop round to the sluice gun and we can start that up, and these guys, you guys can have a go on this if you want. Big water cannon. Sorry? There is actually a nugget up in front of the box up here. We haven't dug it up yet. Right. We don't know where it is. We found it with a metal detector. Nobody's dug it up, and nobody's dug it up.
अभी देखो आगे जा रहे हैं सबसे आगे ये पत्थर उठा के चल रहे हैं डाउन में
We haven't dug it up. As soon as everybody catches up, I'll tell you how it works.
Water gun?
Yes, you can have a go with that in a minute if you want to when I start it up.
Can it start blasting the blocks over there?
It is going to blast when I start it. So as I said, we are a dry climate here in Central Otago. Water is a valuable resource. We get our water here from a small stream on the backside of Mount Difficulty, which is a hill in front of you guys. We can't see the top of it from here. It's got about 8 kilometres of water race. So our water is running south behind the skyline in the water race, round the end of that ridge, back on this side of that ridge till it can drop into this gully that's directly in front of us. So at the mouth of this gully, 25 metres above where we're standing here, we have a small dam. That's the overflow from there. So that's our water for the site. This pipe, we've got 25 metres of head pressure on it. 2.5 bar, 30, 32 psi. That's our water for the site. So typically with this operation, we have one guy on the monitor or the nozzle washing the terrace apart. The rest of the team is standing aside waiting to get access into this hole so that they can pick all the big rocks up out of the way and stack them up. And they're also very mindful about keeping their recovery system, whatever they're using to catch the gold, as close as possible to the material you're washing off these terraces. From this water cannon, I've got a big slurry of clay, mud, sand, gravel and gold. Gold is by far the heaviest material in that mix, and it is smashing down through that wet, damp material. If you don't get it into a recovery system quickly, you've lost the gold. So typically, operations like this with sluicing water cannons lose up to 40% of the gold. Super inefficient. But 25 metres of head pressure, this is what it does. Guys want to make a big splash? You can have a go if you want. We'll grab the end and lift it up. Anybody wants to have a go? Have to put the dam before they go. Where it's a volume going now that we're out of the river, and this moves volume. This is a very small one. The nozzle diameter on this is about 32 millimetres. The largest one of these operating in New Zealand, the nozzle diameter was 10 inches, 250 millimetres. Wow. Here, that was on the west coast, along the border.
No, it's not silver.
Right, we're going to get everybody panning and see if we can find some gold. No, we're going to go down and do the panning down yeah, and that's the overflow. So that 25 metres of head pressure from our dam on the small Pelton wheel on that stamp is generating 8.4 horsepower. So this is an interesting little piece of kit that you've just seen here. This is quite rare. If you have an unlimited water supply, you can have the water going into this bucket, turning this And then overnight while you're in bed asleep, it's going to keep this monitor swinging from side to side, washing the terraces apart. But you need an unlimited water supply, and that was very rare in Otago, so which makes that quite a rare little bit of machinery. But we'll pop down and we'll see if we can get everyone finding.
Oh, you asked one of the bits that comes out of it.
So we've got a pile of gravel over here that I brought up this morning with the digger. That's dug straight out of the hill 500 metres downstream. It is not screened or gone through. I'm going to go and grab a pan full of that gravel and I'll pan it out and show you a basic technique that'll hold gold in the pan. And once I've shown you a basic technique, you can have a go. I'll be right back with a little bit of gravel.
Focus ke rakhna.
The big pile of gold pans over here, a lot of them are different shapes or pressings. I've grabbed this one for a reason. This one has got a recess at the top of the pan that only goes a third of the way around. On this pan, that's the front. That's your last chance to catch that heavy material when you're tipping it out. The whole time I'm working this pan, it's going to be tilted slightly forward. So where my finger is the lowest point in the pan, and we know the gold is the heaviest material in the pan. These stones have got a lot of sand and maybe tiny flakes of gold stuck on them. The gold loves sticking to damp rocks. We throw none of this away until it's been washed clean. Potentially there's gold on them. Now I don't know for sure if there's any gold in this pan, so I'm going to put one little piece in, only so that you can see that what I'm showing you actually works. So there is one little bit of gold, okay? So I'm going to throw that in the pan. See that, guys? And then we're going to get it back again, because this works.
Oh wow.
It's all gold.
This works. So this is the front. I'm tilted forward. Now it is a bit messy for a front because for a start, because I've got to wash all these stones. Just side to side, trying to get all of that clay and dirt and gold off of those rocks. Now all I'm doing is tipping out dirty, muddy water. Don't tip any material out. It is super important to get rid of the mud and clay. So even though the gold is 19 times heavier than water, if a tiny flake of gold gets wrapped up in dirt or clay, it floats out on the top of the meniscus on top of the water, and because it looks like dirt, you don't even see it go. You have to get rid of the dirt before the pan can start doing its job.
But what if a few rocks come off?
Oh. No.
Is that why there's rocks at the bottom?
The gold's going to the bottom, it's heavy.
But is that why there's rocks at the bottom?
Oh, I'm going to tip the rocks in here in a minute.
I'm going to get rid of the rocks from the pan.
Right. I'm happy that I've got those rocks clean. Now I'm going to use my hand in the pan to get rid of these bigger stones and rocks. If you have any sunscreens or hand creams on your hands, don't put your hand in the pan. Those materials are the same as the clay. They're going to envelop the tiny flakes of gold and make them float. So with clean hands, I can grab these rocks and give them a quick shake so that there's no gold stuck on them. Have a quick look, and if it's not a great big gold nugget, I'm just going to ditch it. don't get hung up on finding gold inside the rock here. If you see gold fleck in the rock here, it will be iron pyrites or fool's gold. You're looking for loose flake or chunk gold in your pan. Every week or so somebody does find a chunk.
Has anyone found any today?
Today, I think Saturday was the last time a really nice big piece got pulled out.
Today's the day.
I think it's
Today's the day.
So very quickly we've got rid of all the dirt, we've got rid of all the big rocks, and now we can start using the pan to classify our heavies. So it's still the front, I'm still tilted forward. Now I can go gently side to side to try and work that heavy material to the low spot, not round and round. Now I've just moved all the heavy stuff from the low spot up into the gravel, and when I'm tipping material out, I'm going to throw my gold away. If you only go side to side, the only way heavy material can go is to the low spot. Now I'm going to tip all the water out of the pan. No water in the pan. Now I can, if I want to, I can get a 65, 70 degree angle on that pan. Don't need to, but I could. There's just inertia holding that gravel in there. We know the heavies are heading for where my finger is. So that's also telling us all this stuff at the front of the pan is lighter rock and material, and we need to ditch it. So the water's your friend, let the water do the work. All I'm going to do is dip the pan and lift it and wash some of that material off the front. Wash a little bit off the front, gently side to side, quietly tip all that water out and wash some off the front. And it's pretty much just repeat, repeat, repeat. If you have tipped your water out and you're dipping your pan and nothing's happening, you're not steep enough. Just go a bit steeper and let the water do its job. So I'll show you guys. So nothing's going on. I've just got to go a bit steeper, and bingo, the water's doing its job. All the time we're doing this, we're just refining the heavies in the bottom of the pan.
Maybe you can stop doing that.
When he finds the gold, it's when you stop.
The last thing you'll see will be the gold. There's these bigger stones that are in here are annoying me. I'm just going to flick them out. There's water in the pan, so no gold's going to stick to them. I'm just going to get rid of those. One more and then we'll have a look.
Oh, I can see a bit old.
Shouldn't be able to see any gold. It should be right at the bottom. Because it's heavy.
You gotta learn to do it.
It is a learned technique. 10% of fishermen catch 90% of the fish. 10% of hunters shoot 90% of the game. It's the same with gold. The more knowledge you have about your pursuit, the easier it gets. Right, I'm ready to have a look and see if I've got any gold in this pan. A bit of water in it, and I'm going to tip it quite steeply back towards myself, because I'm going to start looking for yellow stuff in the pan. I'm only going to turn the pan round for your benefit. It is tilted towards yourself. Here's your water line down the bottom, your material at the top. This is the important part of the gold pan, this big piece in the middle. I'm going to quietly wash that water around. If I bring that material from the top to the bottom in a nice measured way, on this big expanse of open pan, everything flares out. So if there's any yellow in here, you're going to get an opportunity to see it. The piece of gold I put in there is under my finger. Let's just hope there's something else in there to see. I'm starting to see all these little black stones in here. That's that hematite and magnetite, iron stone, next heaviest material in the stream. So we've got that in the right place.
There we go.
Right where it was supposed to be. There's only that piece there, there's nothing else. You can see it's reluctant to move. It is 19 times heavier than water. If you find a tiny, tiny piece of gold in the pan, you can't pick it up. it's too small. There's a wee trick in getting the tiny pieces of gold out to take them home, and I'll show you how that works. The wee bottle that I got my piece of gold out of, there's some bottles like this and the bit of pipe over on the bench. There's nice clean water from our dam running in on the end of the trough. If you fill your bottle right to the top with nice clean water, and then with a dry fingertip, if you touch it on those tiny flakes of gold, it'll stick to your fingertip. Touch it on the bottle, now it's in the bottle. The other upside, a tiny piece of gold in a bottle of clean water, it magnifies it, makes it look bigger. So grab a pan and have a go. Somebody could take that one, because you know that pan works.
I just picked this up on the floor, and I see some yellow specks on there.
So the yellow is either been sitting up against some ironstone and it's just rusted stone, or it's a little bit of sulphur.